Welcome, everybody. We'll be kicking off in just a minute. We're just letting the last few people in. Welcome. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike Shore with the Initiative for Competitive Inner City. We're really thrilled today to talk to you about building for growth and to have a fantastic panel discussion. First, I wanted to note that we are joined today by ICIC CEO Steve Grossman. It's a testament to the strategic importance and the value of this new construction cluster to our organization, and we are really excited to be bringing it here, and we're thrilled that, Steve, that you can join us and lend your tremendous support here. I wanted to also thank all of our panelists today. They're all going to self-introduce, so I won't talk to you about their backgrounds, but they are all tremendously successful business owners in the construction space and have been a tremendous resource. They all serve on our BFG Advisory Board and have helped steer us in the right direction, and we believe have made a tremendous difference in how we are setting up this program to be successful and to do the most good for our participants. And lastly, I wanted to just introduce our MC, our moderator, Steve Lamar. Steve Lamar will be our program director for Building for Growth. He brings a tremendous wealth of experience. He was responsible for $600 million plus of annual diverse spend at Kaiser Permanente. He's worked at primes, at subs. He's run his own business, and so he comes at this from many different angles. And I think his guidance as well as his experience will help ensure that this is tremendously successful. Nadia, if you could go to the next slide, please. So just briefly, we're going to have Steve talk to you and give you an overview of Building for Growth. That will be very brief, but we're all available at any time to discuss it more. Many of you have applied, others are in the process of applying. Then we will segue into our panel discussion. And then finally, there'll be an opportunity at the end to network in much smaller groups. One of the things I wanted to point out to you, and I'll ask this again, is if you want in the chat to put your name, your company, your email, we will be happy to share that out with all other attendees, because some networking is great to do after the event as well. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Lamar. Steve, take it away. Steve, are you there? If you may be on mute. Okay.
Looks frozen.
All right. So you know what? Until Steve comes back, I am going to take over and talk to you a bit about BFG. Once he comes back, we will hand it over to Steve. But just in general. Oh, there you are. Great.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. As soon as you introduced me, everything just kind of went blank. I'm sorry about that. All right. So I don't know how far we got into it. Can everybody hear me okay? Mike, if you can hear me, just nod. Okay, cool. All right. So good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you're at. But thank you all for joining. So what is Build for Growth? You can see all the words up here, but let me give you a high-level overview of what's going on. I'm sure everybody's familiar with a construction training program in some capacity. Maybe you've seen it at a large general contractor like a Suffolk or a Gilbane, Hensel Phelps, Clark. They all have a training program. Those programs are great. You know, they're really good at helping you understand how those companies do business. They're really good at helping you understand where they are coming from and some of their perspectives. You may have even seen a similar program within a bank or within a financial institution of some sort, maybe like an EDD or a PTAC, something like that. But what sets Build for Growth a little bit different is you would have to kind of combine all of those programs together to get what we are offering. We really go deep into helping contractors grow their capacity. That is the foundation of what this program is built on. I usually use the phrase, instead of giving you a fish, we're teaching you how to fish, so that we can feed you for a lifetime. There are 20 classes plus a graduation and orientation. So altogether, there's about 21 classes you can see here. We're going to begin on May 12th and essentially run through the end of September. This is for minority and woman-owned companies, women-owned contractors. We are being specific with the construction-based companies. So we are looking for general contractors and subcontractors. And again, we're going to be diving deep. We're going to take a look at financial information. We'll be looking at contractual and construction law. Of course, we will dive deep into bonding and insurance. And then we're going to, look at the operational side of things. On a high level, looking at networking, but also estimating, project management, as well as talent management. How do you grow talent? How do you find talent? How do you retain talent? And as well as train them so that they can themselves grow and hopefully be able to position your company a little bit better for winning work. It will be all virtual. So it will occur every Thursday. Right now we're saying from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the geographic focus that we've discussed thus far, if you kind of take a look at a map, you can kind of say DC to Chicago up to Boston. We have some other strategic partners, Atlanta being one of them. We're seeing some potential candidates come from there. And I believe there's a few other places as well. So with that, I will go ahead and start introductions. I think that's a pretty good overview. Very important. One thing that I did miss, it is tuition free. This is a free course. We are not asking you to come out of the pocket in any capacity whatsoever. And the last thing I'll say is each class is going to be taught by subject matter experts who are also practitioners. So loan officers, bonding agents, estimators, project managers, etc., business owners will be actually teaching this class and or a part of a panel. We have a couple of panels that we're going to be hosting as well. So with that, I'll get into introductions. I will begin with Jennifer. You're the first person I see on my screen. So Jennifer, I'm going to pick on you. If you can, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve, and welcome everybody. We're very excited that we've got so many participants here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. In addition to the former owner and founder of Pinck & Company, I'm actually also on the ICAN Board of Directors. And a 7-time IC 100 winner over the course of the business that I owned for about 20 years. I've spent 45 years in this industry, starting off in the building trades in the late 70s and ending up as the founder and president of a construction management firm. We served primarily as owners' representatives, but we did some CM agency for the nonprofit, public sector, and institutional markets. I've also, I think I have a somewhat unusual career. Prior to starting my business, I was a senior manager on the Big Dig here in Boston. And I was also construction manager on the Boston Harbor project. So Boston had two mega projects that went through town, and I was very, very lucky and extraordinarily well-trained in managing especially large complex projects. And prior to that, I worked in the field. I was in the trades, a field engineer, assistant superintendent, and then a superintendent. So I spent 10 years in the field. And I'm here because many reasons, but one of them is after the region spent $20 billion in the for the MWRA Deer Island project, a $4 billion wastewater treatment plant, and about $16 billion or so on the Big Dig, with lots of attention, programs, training, focus on growing M&WBE firms, believing that, you know, this largesse that also had great consequences for our region should be spent as diversely as possible. And I believe quite firmly that the results were negligible. There were firms that participated on these large projects, but the lasting impact was negligible. It's in the Boston area. And having managed probably about $6 billion worth of work while I owned my company, I saw recurring, sort of recurring issues for emerging firms, many of whom were Black and Brown owned, that I thought, oh, this isn't working. We got to do something about it. One of which is to provide a platform for folks to get the kind of education and training and networking that will serve to grow their businesses. I think, you know, this is an interesting business. There's actually relatively low barriers to entry, but there are significant barriers to growth. I may know my trade and I can start a business, but if I want to scale up, it's a relatively hostile industry. There are many financial barriers, and there's a lot of, there's software, there's training, there's project management. All of that needs to be wrapped into what you do in order to thrive. And so many years ago, I was talking with Steve Grossman and ranting and raving, I should say, about this. And a few years later, 5 or so years later, Steve, one, recruited me to the board, and two, said, can we start a program where we can address what at least I have noted were some endemic systemic barriers to growth. So that's why I'm here. I love the business. I'm mostly retired now, pleased to say, but I'm still deeply committed, I think, well, I'm deeply committed to that this industry should welcome and provide opportunities for people to thrive and succeed. And I mean financially, because there's a lot of money here and it should be spread around. So that's who I am. I'm very happy to be on the panel and to work with Steve over the coming months as we get this thing up and running. So I pass off.
Stephanie, please introduce.
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and join the team as we roll out the program. I'm CEO of Trice Construction Company in Chicago, and we also have offices in St. Louis. Trice Construction is a 55-year-old business that I've been the owner of for the last 15 years. We're a civil contractor. We self-perform concrete and excavation, and we work primarily for utilities. About 80% of our work is for public utilities in the electric and natural gas industry. But we also work on projects for large general contractors nationally, as well as those local. and we are also contractors to public entities in the region. We're proud to have been recently selected to participate on the Obama Presidential Center construction as part of a collective of concrete companies that will be executing the work, concrete work itself, going over the next 2 years. So like Jennifer, I'm also a member of the Board of Directors for ICIC, having been recruited by Steve Grossman several years ago, based on my involvement and participation in a number of ICIC programs, and have been an IC 100 winner over the last 3 years. So we're very proud of those accomplishments. And I really have to echo the statements that were just made on the excitement about having a program that rolls so many aspects into one, gives you one place to go to get the learnings that it would take you multiple programs and years to have access to. So really pleased to be part of this team. And I know there may be some questions coming up later that could provide some additional insight on why I'm here. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. I truly appreciate that. And Jair, my friend, go on, bring us home.
Okay. Well, Steve, thanks so much. And special thanks to Steve Grossman. I don't know if he's still on. As another ICIC board member, I believe in the mission and in the organization, and I've really come at this from a slightly different perspective. We are a owner and investor and developer of real estate in the Mid-Atlantic region. We are not vertically integrated, so we are not property management or construction, but I have consistently seen the value of our activity as an economic engine for our area. And so I've been very interested in creating opportunities across the value chain. That's both in the acquisition and soft costs in a development project, as well as construction, and all the way down to the subcontractor level. And have consistently thought about what are the barriers to success for organizations in this built environment. And it comes down to 3 things, having a strategy, having capital, and having the tenacity to actually get something done. And I think ICIC has worked on strategy for many years, is also making sure that there's real connections to capital, as well as making sure that there's leaders that actually can be rewarded and recognized for their tenacity. But none of that had been focused on the construction industry. And when Jennifer and Stephanie and myself got together to talk about this, we felt like there were so many programs that were built by general contractors for their specific diversity and inclusion goals. But we really wanted to step back and say, how do we actually turn subcontractors into forces and actually can turn the table and actually can protect themselves as they grow, whether it's from legal advice, whether it's from staff recruitment and retention, as well as increasing the balance sheet. So all of that led us to this moment in which we are able to provide this free training for folks who are looking to do that, who are looking to grow their businesses. And one of the things that I find very important is that while the public sector has been a great place for people to get a start, especially with certifications and the like, if not grown properly, if the water's not placed in the plant properly, it can actually not grow in a fashion that actually makes sense and allows those businesses to grow both in the public sector as well as the larger private sector, or what I call the unsheltered sector. And so we want to make sure that the businesses here are recognizing opportunities, finding niches, and making sure they're growing their business well beyond the public sector into the private sector. And that's where I can hopefully see more and more people of color and women-owned businesses work on our private deals, which is 80–85% of what we do. And we have the least amount of participation in those in those areas, and we want to make sure that we're making a change to make sure that it grows over time. Steve?
Yeah. So thank you. This is, as you can see, we have a distinguished panel here, and they're all very successful. So I'm going to ask a series of questions, a couple of housekeeping rules. My time, it is approximately 4:25 in the East. And as you all can probably appreciate, Jair and Jennifer, let's try and keep our answers a little short so we can move through some of these topics that we want to discuss, because I know on the back end we might want to do some networking. So to that end, Jair, I'm going to begin with you, and then Stephanie, if you can go after him, and then Jennifer, bring us home. And the question is this: you all have just described your businesses, and it's very easy to see that you all are quite successful at what you've done. So for our first question, if you could give yourself some advice, your younger
So, Steve, I think I got the question. What's the advice that I would give
advice
myself
when you were in the early?
I think there's a couple things. One, you have to make sure that you set forth a plan, and that plan can have very, very specific goals to it. It is embedded with strategy, with contingency, with all the components of a great business plan, and making sure that's written down, that your entire organization understands it, and that you're marching towards that goal. And then every year, every 3 months, every 5 years, you're actually revisiting that plan to make sure that you are setting new goals and making new strides. But I will tell you a story. When I started in development, I was meeting with a larger company, and I'm sure a lot of subcontractors have felt this with a general contractor. And we had found the opportunity. We had felt that we were providing value, and the larger developer said, yes, but we will have to get to the banks. And when we do, our balance sheets are not the same size, and the banks will treat us differently. And the correlation to the construction industry would be that the bonding capacity is dramatically different. Well, how do you get started if you don't have a balance sheet to start with, and how do you get it built? And really spending time to think about how a series of opportunities will allow you to build a balance sheet, not a single opportunity, not a single contract, not a single win, but building it over time in a stepped ladder fashion is how you get to your end goal. And so we constantly are looking at cash, we're constantly looking at liquidity and the balance sheet, and whenever we could bolster it, we're doing so, because that gives us more access to projects and gives us better terms with our financial partners.
Got you. Stephanie, you're next, please.
I will pick up from there. Jair really hit the nail on the head there. But I think one kind of underlying theme of that is things will probably take a little bit longer than you expect. So if I had to go back and give myself some advice when I was in the early stages, I would probably explain that I needed to develop a little bit of patience, because it's not all, you're not going to hit a home run with every contract opportunity. It's a series of singles that get you there to build up your business. But I would also give myself advice on being out there in and among the industry players that I would want to do business with. I think it's important for early stage and emerging businesses to join industry associations and be active in those, building those relationships with the people that you might not be ready to do business with just yet, but that you want them to get to know you. So network in those places your customers are I think, building banking and bonding relationships early, even as your business is small, as you're growing it, having those relationships identified and beginning to establish them, having conversations, not limiting how many you have relationships with. Bankers, you want to have several that so that when the time comes, who is the best for your business in terms of doing business. And finding a mentor and using that individual frequently. I think that's one of the really big bonuses of this program, because there's a mentor that's tied to it. But you don't know what you don't know, and having someone to run things past to get that input. So fairly early on, maybe 3 years into my business, I developed a board of advisors. And that was a different team than my professional service providers. It wasn't my banker, not my insurance broker, nobody from the bonding industry, but 3 people who had really deep experience in construction. And so that's a team that I could meet with on a regular basis, review those things that Jair talked about, your balance sheet and your income statement, become really close friends with your numbers over time. And then I think finally, the last piece of advice would be decide early what you don't do, because it's easy to get distracted and to move. I probably took on projects that we shouldn't have because we were looking at, there was an opportunity that was being presented, but it probably wasn't right. And so narrow, not so much what you do, but be real clear about what it is that you won't or don't do.
Great advice. Jennifer, what would you say? You're on mute, Jennifer.
Yeah, the advice I would give my younger self is to have been more ambitious. I started my business as a sole proprietor. And then after a couple of years, I got lonely and I decided, well, I'm going to grow my business. But I didn't set out that big master plan for myself. Although I did planning every year and set goals every year, once I had a few under my belt, I didn't really reach big enough. And I think I'm the one that held myself back in an industry that was, as we all know, quite hostile. It didn't really want me to succeed. And the other thing I would say to myself is to have invested in a person whose focus was business development, because this is about relationships. And while I could sell, I found out I was a very good seller. I had no idea, but I'm only one person. And there were staff and projects and clients and banks and, all the stuff you have to do to keep your business growing and thriving. I couldn't go out and build all the relationships that were necessary to build a bigger pipeline. So if I could go back, I would have made an investment in a really, really super business development person.
So that's actually a great segue, and I'm gonna kind of call a little bit of an audible here, but I know you all are up to the challenge. So one of the things that I have heard is, Stephanie, you mentioned be patient. Things don't happen as fast as you would like them to. Jair, you said have a plan and, coordinate accordingly. But, there's this great saying, how do I get ID if I don't have ID? So what's some good advice for finding capital? And, we're dealing with ICIC alumni here. So I know we've touched on this in many of their other classes and curriculum, but what would you say, again, to your earlier selves, to your younger selves, about finding the cash? Because if it's not going to happen as fast as you need it to, and you still need to make mortgage, you still need to feed yourself, how do you find the money? So Jennifer, I'm gonna go right back to you, and then Jair, then Stephanie, okay?
Well, that is the $64,000 question, because I didn't come from a lot of money. I didn't have parents who both either could or would back me. I didn't have a husband who, money. I didn't come from a lot of money. I didn't have, a grandfather who could park $20 million. And I think this is one of the fundamental challenges, I think, of especially Black and Brown owned businesses and women owned businesses, that we don't have that intergenerational wealth used to stand up our companies. So we have to get super creative. There's the friends and family, there's your house, and there's how much risk you're willing to take to get the money. And, I did it a very cautious kind of way. So I think, and I think the environment's changed greatly, and with groups like the ICIC who are helping build banking relationships with institutions that are saying, yeah, okay, these are legit firms with talented leaders who have a strategy and a growth plan. We should use their money. I think the secret is OPM, other people's money. And that is about building relationships, but it's also very much about having your paperwork in order. People want to see your balance sheet. People want to see that you keep good books. People want to see that you're keeping track of your contracts in a really good fashion, so that you know your financial position, and you can also forecast what your financial position is with the business that you've got coming along. So there's not, I think, a simple answer, or we would have all found it. There's not actually an easy answer. There's just being knowledgeable, aware, and building relationships to do it, to get the money where you can, and managing your money. I think that's the other thing, is managing your money. I've seen so many folks who did it and they got into really big trouble that way. And I also think this goes to some of the content of this is, I see people not understanding what kind of a contract they've signed, and they're missing an incredible opportunity, maybe a sad case for the owner, but the scope has changed dramatically. You shouldn't, and you can't be doing that for free. You have to protect yourself. That's part of the way of, of not losing. It's part of way of getting ahead. So yeah, I hope that helps a little bit.
No, that is very helpful. And Jair, I think that sets you up perfectly. Having a good, solid bookkeeping, the foundation is good. Check out your credit. But one of the good things there that I think you might be able to help us out with and shine some light on is other people's money.
Yeah, in the real estate industry, the hardest money to find is acquisition and pre-development dollars. Before the business plan is crystallized, before the risk is eliminated, right before you commence construction. And that's very difficult money to find. And what I actually liked what Stephanie said is you got to be patient, because you have to think through a slew of projects in order to be able to get up and running, and then you're able to fund those things. And so instead of one deal, you have to think through 6 deals, and through those 6 deals or 7 deals, you'll have to actually get dollars from every way you can. The first 2 might be friends and family. The next 2 might be through a government program. The following 2 might be through private equity. And so all of those things have to be put on the table, and you've got to be able to see through all of those to get to a place where you can start making decisions on your own. But banks don't support developers for pre-development dollars. And so therefore private equity sees that as a great opportunity to be extortionists. And so their cost is like putting the project on a credit card. And so you have to be very mindful and very clear about how quickly you can get out of that into something much more manageable. But we found different government programs, like many people, because of our status. We found dollars that we were able to utilize, and we think that those should be tapped whenever possible, because that's what they're there for, or at least intended to get you to your sea legs, so you're actually able to execute on your own.
Great advice. So executing. Executing on your own, Stephanie. Perfect layup for you. How do you
Yeah.
execute on your own with other people's money?
Well, getting to the other people's money, they want to know if they have skin in the game. And I think very early on, being able to have something that you can point to that you brought to the table. So for me, kind of early on, I wanted to make sure that I could operate the business for as long as possible without needing to pay myself. And so that was part of the early investment. I had a long lead into this. I was doing due diligence and purchasing the business from family members, and I knew that I was going to take some time. I was very fortunate to have come out of a corporate career at a Fortune 100 company. So I was able, leading up to the acquisition of the business, to take a couple of years to put some things away so that when I left corporate and I went full time into the business, I only had one creditor, and that was my mortgage holder. So that was the part of the early investment in self that I think was important, that took some of the stress out of it. But I get that not everybody has a luxury to do that. I'd heard this acronym, but I'm not going to give it to you. It said every entrepreneur needs a significant other with a steady income. That's always good to have as a backup to allow the business time to grow and to breathe without having the pressure of chasing down dollars. But when you get ready to go look for the money, I think for me, I didn't quite understand all the capital sources that were out there. And my participation early in Inner City Capital Connections helped me understand all the different types of capital. I was thinking one way, banking, and I had an opposition to private equity. I think about it a lot differently now. And I recall that very early on, I had some angel investors that were asking me questions like, hey, do you need any money? And my response was no. I didn't know enough then to say yes and how to leverage that. So, finding capital, whether it's through grants, through low interest government loans, SBA, which allows you to spread that out over time, I think is always an important source for capital. And that goes back to those bonding relationships. I will say the environment was a lot different 15 years ago in banking than it is now. And for my first line of credit, I had to put up collateral to support that. But now I know many banks are out there that are looking to invest in women and minority-owned businesses, and I think we have to take advantage of it while it's available.
Great point. Great point. So now we have a little bit of capital. We're patient. We've started our business. We're up and running a little bit. So let's talk about talent for a hot second, because it's a problem across the industry. No matter what you're doing, especially in construction, talent is an issue. So I'm gonna go right back to you, Stephanie. As you've been growing your business, how have you been identifying your talent, keeping your talent, or growing your talent? We can go that route, or if you have some other secret sauce that you wouldn't mind sharing. And Jair, I'll come to you next, then Jennifer.
Yeah, I wish there was some secret sauce to talent acquisition and hiring that somebody would clue me into. Talent is a long lead item. And especially now, it's gotten a lot tougher. So we've looked at a number of things and I will tell you, if there's any one thing that keeps me up at night, it's really about finding the right people and getting them in the right seat in the company. So to that end, we've done a couple of things. We established an employee referral bonus program. Good people know good people often, and if they can refer people to us, that helps. What we've had to do, though, is also rely on using recruiters. You don't always want to do that. That's a very expensive way to recruit talent, but the market is so tight these days for certain positions that really becomes a key part of how you might acquire talent. On our crews, the folks that are doing the work in the field, I think what we found is that the critical hire is a really good foreman or a really good superintendent. And those people typically come with or have access to their own crews. We hired a superintendent for the Obama Presidential Center, and he came with a list of 15 names and said, I've been working with these guys for the last 20 years. So that's one we found, that good people in the trades know other people that are effective in the trades. So the other thing I've done is made opportunistic hires. Somebody you come across, whether it's through networking or otherwise, and you think they'll be a good addition to the team. I've made some of those hires without knowing exactly how I would use that individual, but brought them onto the team so that they could bring some skill set, we can get them ready. Because the thing you don't want to do is get the project and then figure out how you're going to staff it. So it's a catch-22. Timing is always the issue, but if there's any way you can do it, if you find some good talent, get them on board, and they'll find their own place.
I heard that. Jair, you got any?
Not to repeat, Stephanie's got great advice, but what I would add is that,
advice for talent?
Yeah, I don't want to step on what Stephanie indicated because it's dead on. I'll add to it instead. Talent recruitment is my #1 job. Because if it's not, then you will fall behind and not have the talent that can actually execute the plan. And so everything Stephanie's right. We have signing bonuses, but you know what else we've done that's really moved? We've brought in HR consultants that have helped us do career pathing. If you have good talent, they want to know where they're going next. What's the next step? What are my skills? What are my competencies? What are the things that gets me from manager to senior manager, from senior manager to director? And we've laid out the path for everyone in the company so that they know exactly what they're doing. We feel like that's going to be able to tamper down attrition and turnover, which the experts are saying are going to be 50% higher than what you've usually had. The next thing, as mentioned, recruiters are important, but we've learned from other folks that sometimes it's not just the folks in the industry, especially for skill sets that are transferable, accounting, office administration, things like that. You need the spouses of your top employees to actually be part of that recruiting effort. So we did getaway weekends for folks who are at the non-real estate specific positions, because spouses needed to be incentivized in addition to your signing your referral bonuses. So we tried to make it a whole family affair in terms of trying to bring people in. And then finally, we make sure that leaders are supported in the organization. We make sure that affinity groups are created. We make sure that people are getting properly recognized in the industry. All of those things are part of culture, and culture alongside your mission, your core values, and the like, I think are what some of the things that keep people at companies long term.
Great. I like the family aspect of that. Jennifer, how about yourself? You have any advice for talent?
Well, I think both what Stephanie and Jair said is spot on. The only thing that I would add is look for people, folks from non-traditional backgrounds. In my business, people either came from construction, they work for contractors, or architects, pretty much, some engineers. And those are great, but I would look beyond the traditional resume to find folks who I knew had succeeded in difficult environments, people who love to learn, and people who had both the personality and the eagerness. Sort of, it's hard to quantify exactly what it was, but look for the non-traditional candidate that other people were overlooking, because there's a lot of folks that got overlooked. And I hired a lot of folks that would never have made it with some of my competitors. They wouldn't have gotten the door. They would have made it. They wouldn't have gotten the door, and they're highly successful with me.
I like that. I like that. Find the diamond in the rough. Okay, so we live in changing times. The world is changing. A lot is going on. When I was coming up, they would say things like, "Don't talk about religion, politics, or money at business." Well, maybe not money, but you know what I mean. That being said, you only need to turn on the TV to see how the world is changing. So as you look to say the next 5 years, okay, we're in 2022, let's make it an even 8, going out towards 2030. What would you say are some of the challenges or obstacles that we should begin preparing for and or have a plan for so that our businesses can be successful? What should we be keeping an eye on? Jennifer, I'll start with you, Stephanie, and then Jair.
Well, I think talent, I think the world has changed dramatically in the last 2 years. So employing all the things that the three of us just said and anything else, I think technology is really important. There's going to be new ways that this business is conducted. It's already, again, changed in the last couple of years. So I think it's really important to understand that, to make those investments. And I think, it's funny because, I'm not in the position to have to worry about what my business is going to look like in 20 years. So I haven't thought about that recently. And I also think, as Stephanie was saying, is especially with Zoom and whatnot, is how do you network? How do you build relationships? They are critical. And I know the pandemic is ending and we'll be back at places, but how can you get yourself known further and wider than you already are, and build those relationships? I think that's going to change. And I think understanding the ways in which we're doing that, I think obviously social media, which I'm not sure. I think that whole environment is changing, what we expect it to do for us, and which kind of industries it's going to work for.
No, thank you for that. I'm gonna tweak the question a little bit for you, Stephanie, because I just noticed we have a attendant in the audience that's developing low-income housing, and I'm curious, as we look to the future and challenges, is housing causing any interesting ripples in the industry? Are you able to secure the talent and have the wages that you want to offer them? Or, and I ask this because I left a company that is not in housing yet found it necessary to do a little bit of development to secure housing for its workers. So I'm just curious, is that something that you're seeing on your level and your environment, as we look to the future to talk about challenges? Because to Jennifer's point, because everything is changing so rapidly, we're starting to see some factors come into play that we may not have always seen in the past. Or am I just reaching there?
Yeah, and Jair, especially from a developer standpoint, may be able to weigh in more on that. What I have seen are, a number of affordable housing projects coming onto the markets. By the time we get involved in all of that early work has been done. But what I am, are opportunities coming a little earlier in the pipeline than traditionally. So I think as part of a mix of work that a company might consider, I think that's a piece of it. It is a huge issue for us as a country. And we see that in Chicago as well. So, you know, having that, and in terms of providing it for workforce that's not an experience we've encountered. But, you know, for us, as we're looking ahead in the business, we're really thinking about scaling, and capital becomes the big piece of that. You know, ensuring that you have growth capital available, so that you can look at not only organic opportunities to scale the business, but looking at potential acquisitions. And so we're finding ourselves in that space. And talent, you know, Jennifer hit the nail on the head. It's always going to be hiring the key talent. You can't execute any of these strategies without knowing that you can have the people in place. For me, and kind of where I am in the business, one of the things I've got to focus on is having a really strong succession plan in place for the next phase of the business, and staying in our lane, right? You talked about affordable housing. We've done those kinds of projects, but we've also decided those aren't part of our key sets of projects that we take on. We have 2 in our portfolio right now that we're actively working on, and we like those. But, you know, for us, that's not a key aspect. So stay in our lane and not getting distracted by all the many different projects that are available, you know, in the infrastructure space that we're in. You know, make sure that we're serving key clients. That's going to be our future as we try to continue growing and scaling our business.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Jair, bring us home.
So I think if you're looking out 5 years, I think you have to really start with whether or not there's going to be a real racial and gender equity discussion. And the proof is going to be in the pudding over time. I have a good friend of mine who told me last summer that while he was an investor developer, minority investor developer that was trying to break into the institutional equity space, that the Rodney King riots happened in '92, and he got the first major pension fund allocation for urban projects 4 years later. It didn't happen overnight. There was a lot of pandering, there was a lot of other stuff, and a lot of noise in the first 6 months and a year or two. But the real meaningful one that really broke open the floodgates happened 4 years later. And so if I looked out 5 years, I would say, okay, we're within that 5 years of when we had this major reckoning in 2020, and have we really made some material changes, and are we part of that change? So that's one. I think in the next 5 years, we're going to have to really come to grips with climate change, and that's going to affect the built environment in a big way. And resiliency is going to be part of that, and whether or not we're going to be making sure that we're building infrastructure and buildings and the like. So I would want to make sure I was in front of both of those items. In terms of affordable housing, I think it will continue to poll as one of the top issues. But when you don't have national policy and you fragment local zoning down to specific geographies, then I think 5 years from now we're going to be in a comparable place where this country does not produce enough housing in general, and therefore it's often skewed to the higher levels, and affordable housing will continue to be a topic but not solved.
Yeah, no, great point. Okay, well, as I said in the very beginning, time is not our friend, and wow, what a difference, about a good 45 minutes makes, huh? So Jennifer, Stephanie, Jair, take a bow. This was a great discussion. I'm going to have to wrap it up. But before I do so, I'm going to give you guys each a moment, if you would like, to say any closing remarks. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you would like to leave the audience with? Stephanie, I'll start with you, and then Jennifer, and then Jair.
Thanks, Steve. I really wanted to share with the audience that this is an incredible opportunity to participate in the Build for Growth program. It's been described already, but I think one of the important aspects of the program is that you build a cohort of individuals that become part of your network. They could be your, they're your classmates now, but you could be their client, they could be yours. There's opportunities to network amongst yourselves and build your businesses with each other. So I didn't want anybody to lose sight that beyond the excellent and expert training and development that goes on in the program, the educational opportunity here, it's build the relationships with each other once you join the program.
Great advice. Jennifer, you have any closing remarks?
Sure. This is a very complicated food chain, sort of the built environment, real estate, construction, super complicated, very risky. And I think that the ability to survive in this business requires someday you act like a lawyer, someday you act like an insurance agent, someday you're buying dirt, some days you're fixing a motor, you're hiring people. It's a very complicated business, and there's a lot of which we don't control. You've got your piece, right? And so my advice is, one, sign up for this, because really you need a big basket of tools to manage the risk and protect yourself, but also to grow. And it's also a very litigious industry. You don't want to be on the opening your door and getting that claim. So not to, go too deep in the sky is falling, but it's a complicated business. Having all the tools in your toolbox is critical for success.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Jair, any closing remarks?
Well, I think that the reality is that if you have the patience and you have big dreams, this business is also a place in which you can make incremental success. And with incremental success breeds more opportunity. And with with a network and with a set of folks who you can pick up the phone, jump on Zoom or whatever, you can realize that you're not the only one who's gone through this. Because I can't tell you how many times early in my career, I thought I was the only one in the world who's ever had to deal with this type of contract or this type of return of terms or this type of bank relationship. And the reality is, within the built environment, it may have a couple different shades and sizes, and zeros might be in front of it or behind it or whatever, but it's often the same thing. And the skill sets that Jennifer talked about are skill sets that almost everyone in the industry has had to learn somehow, some way. And as long as your network is strong and as long as you're patient, the incremental components of this is much different than a tech company that either is boom or bust. The built environment is a much different game. And I encourage each one of you to be as successful as you want to be.
Well, thank you all again so much. To our audience, these are our advisors. So hopefully you can see that this is going to be a great and quality program. Hopefully, if you yourselves can't take advantage of it, hopefully you know somebody you can, and feel free to make them aware of it. And with that, Michael, I'm going to turn it back over to you. My name again is Steve Lamar, and I thank you for your time.
Steve, I can't thank you enough for your expert facilitation and your leadership here, but I really want to thank Jennifer, Stephanie, and Jair. I feel a lot smarter now. There was just a whole lot of collective wisdom that you shared, and it has been the backbone. We are, we couldn't be where we are today, and we just want to thank you not only for today, but all that you have done throughout this process of getting it on. We are now going to shift. We have, this went a little bit longer. I didn't want to cut this off because there was so much good information being shared. We're going to go into networking groups. Just a couple of things I wanted to say. This will be smaller groups. First is, if you joined late in the process and you want to have your emails, your contact information shared with the other participants, just put that in the chat. A lot of you have already done that, but we will compile that and send that out to everybody. If you don't want your name shared, don't do that, or let us know that you'd prefer that we don't share your name. And in these breakout sessions, really, you only have about 15 minutes, but it will be a single breakout session with 7 or 8 other businesses. The ground rules, really, there aren't many ground rules, but don't filibuster. It would be great if you can spend a minute or two giving the elevator pitch for your company. And then it's sort of an open conversation. We'll let you guys ask each other questions that you may have. What are your challenges? What do you see as opportunities? But it really is open. So with that, Maria, can you shift everybody into their breakout rooms? And thank you all for attending.